All right, let's dive into one of the most, truly dramatic and divided times in all of American history, the Gilded Age. This was a period that really forged the modern world as we know it, but not through everyone coming together. No, it was a story of just incredible, stark contrast and conflict.
Just let that sink in for a second. Imagine your entire future, everything, not determined by how smart you are or how hard you work, but just where you happen to be born. Pretty wild, right? Well, for millions of people back in the Gilded Age, that wasn't a hypothetical. That was their reality.
And this is really what it looked like. Picture this. On one side of the street, and I mean that literally and figuratively, you've got these incredible mansions, just unimaginable luxury. And right across the way, people are working grueling 16-hour days just to put food on the table. We're talking about the same country at the very same time, but it might as well have been two different planets.
So, yeah, this is the core theme that defines the whole era. It was actually called the Gilded Age for a very specific reason. Something that's gilded is covered in just a thin layer of gold, right? So on the outside, everything looks shiny, brand new, full of progress. But if you scratch just below that surface, oh boy, there were some serious problems.
And you can see why it looked so good on the surface. Steel towers were shooting up into the sky, railroads were stitching the entire continent together, and these massive, unbelievable fortunes were being made, like, overnight. But all that glitter, it was hiding a much different reality for the vast majority of people who were just trying to get by, day in and day out. So, the big question is, who was behind all this incredible change? Well, it really came down to a handful of incredibly powerful men, the industrialists. Let's take a look at the titans who were, quite literally, building this new America from the ground up. First up, you've got Andrew Carnegie. You really can't overstate his impact. His empire of steel, well, it built the very skeleton of modern America. We're talking skyscrapers, bridges, railroads, all of it. He was the foundation of the country's industrial power. And then you have John D. Rockefeller. Think about this. Oil was quickly becoming the lifeblood of, well, everything. Industry, transportation, you name it. And Rockefeller? He controlled pretty much all of it. His company, Standard Oil, was a monopoly on a scale that nobody had ever seen before. And rounding out this group, we've got J.P. Morgan. Now, he was a little different. He wasn't making steel or drilling for oil, but as a financier, his power was, you could argue, even bigger. Morgan's influence was so massive that he could, by himself, either save the entire U.S. economy or send it into a tailspin. That's some serious power. And this all leads to a huge debate that's still talked about today. Were these guys captains of industry? Brilliant visionaries who are dragging America into the future? Or were they robber barons, just ruthless monopolists who built their fortunes by crushing anyone who got in their way? The truth is, they were probably a bit of both. But whatever you call them, the result of what they built was, well, it was crystal clear. It led to this absolutely staggering reality. By the year 1900, the richest 1% of Americans controlled more wealth than the other 99% put together. Let me say that again. 1% had more than the other 99%. Just look at this. It's the wealth of an entire country basically split down the middle. You've got this tiny, tiny group of elites on one side, and then you have literally everyone else on the other. This massive imbalance is what the Gilded Age is all about. Okay, so we've seen the world of the ultra-rich, but what about the other 99%? What was life actually like for the millions of workers and immigrants who were the engine of this whole industrial machine? Well, let me tell you. Their reality was a long, long way from mansions and marble. You had cities just exploding in size as millions of people, many of them immigrants, poured in looking for that American dream. But what they often found, it was closer to a nightmare. We're talking families packed into tiny tenement apartments, terrible sanitation, disease spreading everywhere, and jobs that were just unbelievably dangerous. Seriously, it was not uncommon to have 10 people, 10, living in one single room. Sometimes it was even multiple families sharing that space. That big dream of a better life, it got squeezed into the smallest, harshest corners you can imagine. And if you think living conditions were bad, the workplace was a whole other level. Can you even imagine working 16 hours a day, surrounded by these deafening, roaring machines with zero safety features? The air was choked with smoke and dust, and getting hurt wasn't a question of if, but when.
And this wasn't just for men. It was for women and kids, too.
Eventually, something had to break. You just can't have these two worlds, this extreme wealth and this extreme struggle, existing side by side forever. They were on a collision course, and workers started to organize. They started to fight back, demanding a fair share of the wealth they were creating with their own hands. And that fight, it often got ugly. It turned violent. As you can see here, the conflicts just kept getting bigger and more intense. It started with things like the Haymarket Affair in '86. Then you had the huge Homestead strike against Carnegie Steel Company, and it all culminated in something like the Pullman strike in '94. A strike so massive it shut down the entire country's railroad system. The federal government had to step in to stop it.
And that just brings us right back to that powerful contrast, doesn't it? On one side, you've got a world of gold, silk, and crazy lavish parties. And on the other side, people weren't asking for any of that. They weren't asking for mansions. They were just demanding the absolute basics: a fair wage, a safe place to work, and to be treated with a little bit of dignity. So when you step back and look at it all, what's the legacy of the Gilded Age? Well, it's complicated. It's a mix of just breathtaking innovation and some really troubling unanswered questions that honestly we're still dealing with today.
I mean, you absolutely cannot deny the incredible progress. This is the era that gave us electric light thanks to Edison, the telephone from Alexander Graham Bell. It gave us railroads that connected a continent, and it turned America into the biggest industrial powerhouse on the planet. For real, the modern world as we know it was born right here.
But it also left us with these huge, nagging questions. Questions like, what's a fair way to distribute wealth? How do you balance the power of these giant corporations with the rights of everyday people? And maybe the biggest one of all, what's the real cost of all this progress? The Gilded Age might be over, but its echo, and those very same questions, they're definitely still with us.